good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for Secondhand Stories, Exploring Architectural Salvage, our second webinar of the year, and in partnership with our colleagues at Historic Albany Foundation and Historic Ithaca. I'm Erin Tobin, the Executive Director of Adirondack Architectural Heritage, and I'm joined today by Pam Howard, Executive Director of Historic Albany Foundation, and Susan Holland, Executive Director of Historic Ithaca, along with my colleague, Christine Bush, AARCH's Preservation Services Director. Today, we're talking about architectural salvage and how does that topic connect to AARCH's mission and that of other historic preservation organizations. We are about better public understanding, appreciation, and stewardship of our architectural resources and reusing the materials that make up our buildings, often carefully crafted materials, plays an important role in that understanding and stewardship. Waste reduction and the reduction of greenhouse gases associated with new building construction are key factors in preservation's role mitigating climate change. As this slide demonstrates, it takes 42 to 80 years to overcome the negative environmental impact of new construction. Construction of new buildings accounts for 25% of that building's carbon emissions. And this locked-in carbon emissions is due to building material manufacturing, material transport, and the construction process. Existing buildings here have embodied energy built into them through those extant building materials. And in New York State, waste from new construction, renovation, and demolition projects generates, again, about 25% of that solid waste volume. And taking down, demolishing a single standard Main Street building that's 25 by 120 feet deep negates the environmental benefit of recycling over 1.3 million aluminum cans. With all the interest in recycling our cans, bottles, and newspapers, our government, and perhaps some members of the environmental movement, miss the boat when it comes to eliminating waste and the ensuing greenhouse gases produced from building demolition when they don't support things like architectural salvage, historic preservation, reusing existing buildings, and deconstruction, which is another alternative that we're not talking about much today, but you may learn more in the future. And this is a slide showing Repurposed Savannah, which is an organization that works to deconstruct buildings whose materials would otherwise lead to the landfill. And architectural salvage can do the same. We have to be careful not to rely on deconstruction and architectural salvage as an easy out for those who wish to demolish existing buildings, but we need to use it as part of the process when there is no alternative to demolition. And we will now hear from Pam and Susan about their architectural salvage programs. I'll give a brief introductory bio to them both. And following the presentations, Christine Bush will moderate the discussion and question and answer. Pamela Howard has over 35 years of experience in both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors, an extensive background in successful fundraising and development, financial, personnel, and project management expertise. And she's been the executive director of Historic Albany Foundation for just over 5 years. The Historic Albany Foundation Architectural Parts Warehouse, celebrating its 45th year in operation, can be seen as a physical manifestation of HAF's mission. And Historic Albany Foundation is celebrating its 50th birthday. I think you said today, right, Pam? Yesterday. And to enable house parts to be restored, reused, and to avoid the landfill is a win for everyone. Their 10,000 square feet of inventory includes doors, shutters, windows, all types of plumbing supplies and fixtures, and the occasional antiques. Their customer base is everyone from the do-it-yourselfer to local preservation contractors. And their inventory comes to them from donations or from buildings slated for demolition. The warehouse is staffed by 2 part-time employees and a dedicated volunteer corps. Susan Holland has been the executive director at Historic Ithaca since 2017 and has worked in the field of preservation and community development for 25 years. At Historic Ithaca, she leads the team to provide programming, education, and advocacy as the voice for preservation in Tompkins County and in the Finger Lakes region. To Susan, preservation and sustainability are one, and to that end, Historic Ithaca is a founding member of CROWD, which stands for Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development. She works on teams to decarbonize all existing buildings for Ithaca's Green New Deal, which is the first program of its kind globally. Historic Ithaca was established in 1966. So it's the oldest sibling among the three of us here, as a community response to threats to downtown Ithaca landmarks. In 1991, Historic Ithaca opened significant elements in an old tobacco barn on the outskirts of Ithaca with the slogan, "Recycling at its best." And over the last 30 plus years, it's grown into a full-fledged nonprofit architectural salvage store and is now located in the 1880s warehouse in Ithaca's South Side neighborhood. It is also the site of Work Preserve, a job training program for young adults with barriers to employment. So as I said, Pam will present first, followed by Susan, and then Christine will moderate the discussion and Q&A.
So welcome everybody. It's so great to be invited to speak today. Historic Albany Foundation is 50 years old as of yesterday. Our organization and the Preservation League of New York State, we both turned 50 yesterday. We were incorporated on the same day. So we're doing a lot of different programming this year to be able to celebrate. Basically, our mission is to advocate for Albany's architecture, including buildings that have historic or civic value. We do this through our advocacy, education, and technical services, in addition to our architectural parts warehouse and our tool lending library that I'll talk a little bit about as well. The picture here is our warehouse on Lexington Avenue in downtown Albany. So warehouse facts. So the organization is 50 years old and the warehouse was founded 5 years later. So that is 45 years old. We are located in, like I said, on Lexington Avenue in downtown Albany, in a building that was donated to us in around 1995. In total, we've got 12,000 square feet of building space. 10,000 of that is occupied by the warehouse. And as Erin said too, we really do see our warehouse as a physical manifestation of the mission work that we do. Being able to bring people in, being able to reuse materials, being able to keep building materials from the landfill really is a big part of what we do. Also, all of our inventory is either donated, people drop it off, we go and salvage, or we also do some pickups. A little bit about the kind of inventory and things that we have here. Our annual sales are over $200,000. It's a 25% increase over the past 5 years. And I think there's a few factors that have done that for us. One is, unfortunately, a lot of organizations like us, either for-profit or not-for-profit, have gone out of business. And so there's not a lot of other businesses like us around. And also the pandemic. I think everybody started nesting and fixing things up, which was great for people purchasing items as well as cleaning things out and dropping inventory off to us. The warehouse sales account for about 40% of our annual operating budget. And we do have 2 part-time staff. We have a manager and an assistant manager. The other day I was putting together some statistics, and last year we had over 4,000 individual sales, which accounts for about 5,500 visitors. Some of those are obviously repeat customers, but it's about 5,500 individuals who have come through our warehouse in the past year. We also couldn't do what we do without a core of volunteers. We have a solid group of about 15 people, and they do everything from help to run the point of sale. We have people who come in and just love to clean plumbing supplies. It's a little known fact that clean things actually sell a lot better. So we have folks who come in and just love to clean and organize and do research and help to price things. We have other folks who just love to come in and clean. We have another core group of folks who also, when we go out to do a salvage, are specially trained in all of those things as well. At any given time in our warehouse, we have over 600 doors, thousands of windows. bathtubs, sinks, shutters, plumbing supplies, vintage tile, a little bit of everything that you're looking for. Again, our inventory, customers either bring it in. We always say you never know what's coming into the warehouse. We're shocked. You know, one day we were having a warehouse social and some guy stopped by and he was like, "Hey, do you want this furniture?" It was actually built-in cabinets that had been in a house that was designed by the architect Marcus Reynolds. So you absolutely never know. We just happened to be open because we were having a party in the warehouse that night. Dave and Earl are our staff. They are always on the ready with the so-called Bert and Ernie van to go out and get things and bring them in. So, you know, we love it if you take the bathtub down to the first floor, but our guys are great at going and picking things up. Salvage, we do have a lot of relationships with the city, the county, property owners. So if a building unfortunately is slated to come down, we are usually the first call. Sometimes if a building is really in bad shape, the contractors and the demo folks will get things out for us. So we are, you know, having those relationships key to be able to get things to divert what we can from a demolition from the landfill. Promotion and advertising, basically we spend no money on that. Some reason is because we don't really have to. We have a really great social media presence, the warehouse as well as HAF in general. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page. We do a weekly email newsletter, so we always have a column of what's new in the warehouse. And a lot of times, whatever we advertise that week on social media and in the warehouse will pretty much sell that weekend. Somebody's always in to get it. We also do other things like tabling. We do some antique shows, the vintage roundup, things like that, just to kind of get the word out a little bit more about who we are and what we do. A couple times a year, we do warehouse social, which can be a thank you to our customers and to our volunteers, and also just for like-minded people to, you know, to hang out on a Friday night and talk about their projects. That's one of the things, everybody that comes into the warehouse, absolutely, they'll spend the day here telling us about their projects. And also word of mouth. If you come in and have a great experience and find what you're looking for, you know, spread the word. So the other thing that we did in the past 2 years that's an extension of our warehouse is our new tool lending library. Sort of libraries of things are becoming a lot more popular. It's also a great aspect of shared economy. We don't all need to own all the tools that we might use one weekend. And also tools can be expensive. We opened our tool lending library in August of 2022, and it has its own space in its warehouse. We have volunteers who just work on our tool lending library. We're open 2 days a week, Wednesday afternoon and Saturday morning, for folks to come in and borrow tools for a flat fee of $20 per year. You can borrow as many tools as you want. We also have scholarships available because we don't even want the $20 to be a barrier to anybody being able to borrow tools. Currently, our inventory has over 680 tools. Many of them were donated to us, which was fantastic. And we also raised money through grants and individual and corporate donations to be able to buy tools. We currently have about 250 members. And since we opened in August, we'd had 1,182 individual tool lending transactions. So our current goals of our tool lending library is to provide low-cost tools to all the neighborhoods in Albany, but we do especially like to focus on our most economically disadvantaged neighborhoods, because unfortunately those are also the neighborhoods with the houses that need the most help. And we all know that deferred maintenance is one of the leading causes of vacancy, and we want people to live in a safe environment. So being able to offer tools at a very low cost is helping with those deferred maintenance issues that we all see. Again, shared economy. I know for myself, I don't have a lot of storage. When I lived in a row house in Albany, I didn't have room for sawhorses and a table saw and all of those things. So you can come in and borrow everything that you need for an individual project. We also offer monthly DIY and how-to classes. We want people who borrow our tools to borrow them safely. We also teach people, we just did a plastering class last weekend, so we want everyone to be able to learn as well as giving them the tools. And most through our generous benefactors, most of our classes are allowed to be either free or very low cost. We also partner with a lot of other organizations in the community for building projects, cleanups, beautification. We usually do some seed swaps when it's spring and gardening season. We've done some beautification projects at the Shaker site out in Colony. We work with the Refugee Center. And also in the springtime, we do some cleanup activities on some of the vacant lots in our neighborhood with the city of Albany. So the most exciting part of the tool library is we just bought a van. So the next stage of, instead of doing brick and mortar tool library branches around the city in the different neighborhoods, we decided the most effective way to reach out to more citizens was to create a mobile tool truck. So one of our sponsors is a construction contracting company. They had a 5-year-old van that they were selling. We purchased it, so we are in the process of outfitting that. And we have partnered with the Albany Public Library, and we'll be parking the van in their parking lot certain days a week. For example, the Delaware Avenue Library does a farmer's market on Tuesdays. So that way we'll be there on Tuesdays when there's something already going on. So we'll be doing that this spring, and we'll keep that growing. And when we move our headquarters, hopefully sometime about a year from now, we'll be starting another tool library branch at our new location down at 48 Hudson Avenue, the oldest house in Albany that we're also working on as a project, and keeping our current tool library in the West Hill neighborhood where it's really, really needed. So that's a little bit about, maybe more than a little bit more, about what we do here at Historic Albany Foundation with our warehouse and our tool library, and how, you know, we can really put our mission to work for people.
Well, thank you, Pam. That was wonderful. Very excited to hear about the warehouse, and the tool lending library really sounds fantastic, especially with the advent of now being able to go mobile. That's really exciting. As we mentioned, you know, if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A, and after we hear from Susan Holland, we'll be answering those questions for you. So we will let Susan take it away.
Thank you, Christine and Aaron and Pam. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Pam, great stuff there. Historic Ithaca is a little bit older. We're I guess the grand dame in the group. We are founded in 1966 when the National Preservation Act came, and that's Lyndon B. Johnson actually signing the act there. So Historic Ithaca is a true grassroots organization, just as Historic Albany is, and we were facing multiple demolitions downtown, and a member of the National Trust came here to talk to, actually they were taking a class at, there's a woman who was taking a class at Cornell, and she got asked by the downtown Ithaca Business Women's Group to come and speak to them about all these demolitions and possibly starting a group. And that's how Historic Ithaca started in 1967. We had our first meeting. We have a lot of evidence of this. If you can look behind me, we have a lot of paperwork and archival work that we have here. So our first meeting was in 67, like I said, and Historic Ithaca, the city of Ithaca itself, Historic Ithaca represents all of Tompkins County, but in 1971, the city of Ithaca really took steps to be passed the first ordinance, one of the first ordinances in the country, our preservation ordinance, and we have a Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission, and you can just see some of the examples of some of the buildings that we have here. About 10% of our buildings are on either the national or local register. We have about 6,000 buildings, and that'll come into play in a little bit. We have some great examples of preservation, but Ithaca is a bit younger than Albany. So the city was incorporated in 1822. So when I got here, I was very surprised. We also have Cornell University, which takes up a lot of space. There are historic resources there. Morrill Hall that you see right here in the middle is our only national historic landmark in the city. So we have districts, we have national registered districts, and always busy making more. And we also work in rural areas. This is the town of village of Trumansburg to the left, the camp house, the black and white photos, and Old Caroline Town Hall, one of the projects that we'll be working on. It's a former school house, and you can see it's a beautiful Italianate building, but needs some work. So we were lucky enough to write a grant for the town and work with them. In addition to the city of Ithaca, we have 9 towns here. We have hamlets and villages, and each with their own jurisdiction and home rule. So a lot of times only the city of Ithaca has a preservation ordinance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about waste diversion and things like that. We have a lot of rural spaces. We are a true not-for-profit. We do lots of educational work. This is just some of our fun out there this past year. We work in the city cemetery. We volunteer. The city cemetery itself, the Ithaca City Cemetery, is actually a city park, a city arboretum as well, and don't have a lot of city resources going into it. So we have a Friends of Ithaca City Cemetery. And you can just see some of our different types of work that we do. I won't go into it because we're going to talk about our salvage warehouse. And then we also do preservation awards, as I know Historic Albany does as well, which is to award the best in preservation and some of the innovations that we see across our service areas. We also do a ton of advocacy. Historic, I would say Ithaca itself, the city of Ithaca, again, is the only one with a preservation ordinance. There are buildings coming down left and right, but these are some of our saves. The Cascadilla Boathouse, which was not in any danger except in 1950s. We worked on that. That's in Stewart Park. It's a boathouse that's been in operation as a boathouse since the 1890s. The stone house is 1822, very early. We have a preservation easement on that. And the red house that you see to the right is our latest save, was going to be demolished for a parking lot in the middle of our downtown. So that said, and actually that building on the red house is, we got very involved. It was owned by the county, Tompkins County. And we were asked while we were standing in it, if we wanted, what would it take to deconstruct the building? And that's when we started working on the advocacy to save it. So significant elements, just like Historic Albany. And if you look at our two organizations, sometimes I see so many parallels. Our salvage store is only a little bit over 35 years old. And it was started in a tobacco barn a couple miles from here. And then it moved to an 1880s carriage house in 1998. And then like Historic Albany, our building was partially donated and we partially pay for it here in the south side of Ithaca. Our present location, we moved here in 2000. You can see on the left what it looked like. It's been a million things. It started out as the electric hosiery company in the 1880s. And the office that I sit in is to the right, where you see the red and white. It looks pretty much like that, except for the sign is missing. The red and white grocery, and that was the offices for the original warehouse building. We are open 6 days a week, almost 5 to 6 hours a day. Saturday's our busiest day. and we are, this was our latest, our new website. And we only take donations, but we do consignment. We have some of our folks who will buy things. In fact, Charlie Pomada, who's our original manager, original founder of the organization, still comes to us with things. We do salvage buildings, go in what we call soft strip, not deconstruct. We'll talk about deconstruction in a moment. I don't have a cadre of volunteers the way they do in Albany, and some days I want to call them and ask them if they can come. I'll house and feed them. This is you can't do any of this without staff also, since I don't have volunteers. This is going from left to right. Hannah, Jordan, Bethany, Gino, and Christine, and they run the gamut from being our retail associates, our marketing. We have a marketing director, a product and materials manager. Gino runs our work preserve program, which I'll talk about in a minute, and Christine is our preservation services coordinator. They have various roles, and we are pretty heavily funded through our job training program, but we'll talk about that in a minute. These are just some of the things. We have 3 floors, no elevator. Hence, I'm doing a shameless plug for our sale. If you happen to find yourself in the Ithaca area, we have a 75% off millwork, which is on our 3rd floor, and asking people to carry it down. When I talked about Cornell earlier, we get a tremendous amount of goods from Cornell when they are renovating. They have, the university is 1868. And so they do have some old buildings. The latest was a 1920s women's dorm that was being restored or renovated, I should say. And you can see the doors that are there. We received about 600 pieces of their furniture. And so it provided a lot of sales, but also we needed a lot of space. We're starting to we're mid-century modern things. So we sell just about what Historic Albany says. We have doors are our best sellers in every level. The beautiful flowers that you see there are just something that came in. You don't know what's going to be in a box, but some of your best donors have some pretty amazing things. Those are needlepoint, beautiful needlepoint seat covers. If I was crafty, I would buy them myself and do something with them. They're just gorgeous, but we get a lot of things like that. And again, the mid-century, we have a heavy student population and sort of that IKEA aesthetic, if you will, and sort of that minimalist look. And so we're selling a lot of mid-century stuff. We don't have a lot of mid-century buildings though, so getting it is not been as easy as we'd like. This is Luna, our store. She's not our store mascot. She's our marketing director's dog. And so she does a lot of posts, but not always with Luna. We also have what we call in Ithaca a reuse trail, which is we have a lot of vintage and secondhand stores. Finger Lakes Reuse is a bigger animal than we are, and they take everything, whereas we only are very selective in what we take, and they're probably a mile down the road from us. So we partner together on lots of projects and lots of things. Just like Historic Albany, our programming, our revenues pay for our programming, and it's about 40% of our total budget. And our top year was the year of the pandemic, as all of the home goods and home improvement places where we made 17% over what we made the year before. We have about 11,000 visits a year, because again, we're a destination for reuse stores. And we could get better at the tourism on that piece of it. And again, we don't have those volunteers. So one thing that we have done about 13 years ago, we started a program. We saw there was the need to train young adults. There's a lot of unskilled labor here. Our poverty rate is pretty high, believe it or not, and affording anything and having some fiscal independence is difficult if you're basically not working at the university or the hospital with skilled and the academic world. So we had our work preserve program is training young adults, a cohort classified by HUD, housing and urban development, 14 to 24. years of age, and generally they have some kind of barrier to employment, including being an early an emerging worker. So you can see some of them down below. I think they were building lampshades and doing some learning how to do electrical work. The last few years, we've moved to a more trades-based focused training, and we can do an assessment of the person's skill levels, and we use some basic trade applications to do that when they come into the program. It is morphed into what we call a green job starter kit, where we're recruiting and working with all of our partners in the workforce development world. There's a lot of us here. And we find that restoration, repair, deconstruction, construction, HVAC, electrical, basic plumbing all fit into the green job economy. And a lot of us are pretty much devotees to that world. So, and working towards that. So we're helping these young adults gain financial independence, learn how to work and be part of a team, soft skills, explore careers and see what they're good at, and then gain confidence and have part of a secure team. We get funding from public and private partnerships, foundations. The city of Ithaca helps out with their urban renewal agency funding from HUD actually. And we do not pay our training wages. We have outside partners through the county that pay their training wages to come, and we're just the training site. So that takes up part of our spaces here. A word about the Green New Deals that everybody's talking about everywhere. Preservation was going to be left out unless Historic Ithaca put here, at least in the city of Ithaca. We inserted ourselves, and we really inserted ourselves. They came up with the Green New Deal in 2019. They wrote a code for new buildings. And as an advocate, I stood up in one of the first meetings and said, well, what about existing buildings? And so we have been working on sustainability. We actually ourselves became one of the first 10 buildings to be under their Electrify Ithaca program, and we got weatherization, and then we have all new air source heat pumps, so we are off gas completely. Actually, as of today, when they cut the last gas meter out front. So we practicing what we're preaching to others. When we were working at first on just electrification and some energy retrofits for buildings, we also realized as we were watching this demolition, the building on the left was the one, it's called the Chicona Building, and it was where College Town Bagels, a beloved institution of Ithaca and in College Town, 100% corner in our college area, was not allowed to be landmarked, for a local landmark. It was the first, one of the early Greek American confectionaries and groceries there to supply, provisions to the students that were here. And as we were talking about retrofitting building, they were demolishing this building, and that's what we saw. And we realized we had a very big problem with waste and waste aversion. So we started a group called Crowd, and it's a group of preservationists, planners, architects, academics, policymakers, and it's in support of the circular construction and building reuse, just what we've been doing the whole time. It is called Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development, and we began at the beginning of the pandemic. And as the professor said, Zoom was our friend. So we are working right now to have a deconstruction ordinance for the city. Just some more statistics for you. 600 million tons of building waste are generated each year in construction and demolition of buildings and infrastructure, and 90% of this waste is from demolition. And yet we have these statistics that we have a lot of studies done. 80% of this waste could be reused and recycled, and construction and demolition waste is generated by 2 times the rate of solid municipal solid waste. So we've been working on all of this. We're also working together to we have statewide policy group together that is talking about ordinances for regulatory and laws for the state of New York. There actually is one in committee in the Assembly and Senate at the moment about circular construction. So what's the best thing to do? We always say preservation, of course, but we have other ways to, extend the lifespan of a building. moving buildings, preservation, overbuilds, retaining elements in situ salvage, what we all do, and then deconstruction. If you go on the Crowd website, you can actually see this building being deconstructed. It was a large project, and we have some preservation minded two professors in particular at Cornell that have been really working towards this and training legions of students through their Just Places lab and their and the circular construction lab. So we're very, very lucky that they are thinking about it. And I think we're turning some architecture students into preservationists, which is also very important, even though Cornell also has the historic preservation major here as well. And then another student, Wyeth, who's been working with us for a long time from the Just Places lab and the circular construction lab, came up with this inverted triangle of demolition being like the end of life. And I think it's a wonderful graphic of kind of what we're doing. So we're in the middle of deconstruction, and that's what you know, Pam and our group, Historic Albany, does. And you feel good about it, but you know there's a lot more to do, and you need a lot more resources and a lot more people to do this work. And so our founding partners for Crowd were us and Just Places Lab, Circular Construction Lab, my friends at the Finger Lakes Reuse, the Susan Christofferson Center for Community Planning, the Preservation Alliance of Central New York, and the City of Ithaca. So, and we meet every Monday at 9 o'clock. So that's it from me. And thank you for this opportunity to present what we've been up to out here, especially during the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Susan, and Pam. You know, one of the parallels that I really see is both your organizations are doing such tremendous work, and so much of it with so little staff. Small but mighty preservation organizations. It's the motto we live by.
Yes.
But really impressive, and also just to see how the salvage element really kind of dovetails into all the other work that you're doing, you know, financially supporting the sort of sustainability, the, you know, trying to develop the circular economy, with, of course, preservation first, but we all know that saving every building is just not a reality. So having this in there, and you know, also thinking about all the other components that we need people to do the deconstruction, we need facilities to bring materials through. So it's a really complex and you know, wonderful that you're sort of a linchpin and kind of all this stuff that is you've been doing for years, but people are finally starting to recognize it, just its value. Now, I know, Pam, you're getting ready to do a big move. You know, perhaps you want to talk a little bit about 48 Hudson and the work you're doing and how that's going to impact some of what you're doing with the salvage warehouse.
Yeah, thank you. Aside from everything else we do as an organization, in 2013, we were actually gifted a building for $1. The Van Oosteren Radliff House is a 1728 Dutch urban timber frame building that was sort of discovered inside another building in downtown Albany. And it's located in what we call the sea of parking lots. It was where a convention center was supposed to go. And so there was a lot of vacant land around it. The convention center was downsized and built in another area. So the building was given to us to protect it when they thought that the convention center was going to be built, because it was sort of sure to be in the way and torn down. So we were able to save that from happening. Right now, we are the only entity who's actually putting any money into that area. We're actually between grants, donations, different fundraising, we're actually putting $4 million into this building to make it habitable. And also we're going to make it our headquarters in hopefully about a year, depending on construction. So the offices as well as the warehouse will be moving directly into downtown Albany. Will be located on Hudson Avenue between Broadway and Pearl Street. So we're looking forward to a new location, but there's a lot of logistics that have to happen between now and then, especially downsizing our inventories. We have a lot of things that we've had for 40 years that may never sell. So I'm not allowed to say fire sale. Our architect kind of frowns on that. So not allowed to say fire sale, but we are having some liquidation sales. You know, we have way more windows than anybody's ever going to buy. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we need to get rid of. And then we can really plan our space for the new location, which will be great. We're going to have a meeting conference room, which we don't have right now. We're going to have a genealogical research room, as well as our staff offices and the warehouse. So we're pretty excited. It's pretty daunting to even think about it, and just the expense of moving 10,000 square feet of inventory, which is not part of the construction budget. So the whole thing is just incredibly frightening. But we're really looking forward to it. We're finally under construction again on the house, and we'll be working on the exterior as soon as the weather gets a little bit warmer. We just ordered super expensive custom Dutch bricks. There's one company in the country that makes those. And I say to my architect, really? They cost that much? It's a lot. And he's like, well, of course they do. It's like, so we're going to be starting to work on the front of the building, which will be restored to its 1728 appearance, which I think will also get a lot more public attention once the work is done on the outside. We've been really working on stabilization efforts on the interior to get ready for that work on the outside. So we're hoping to have an unveiling mid-June of the front of the house.
One thing that I was going to ask, I know that Pam, that you don't take sort of large structural elements like beams and columns and things like that. Susan, do you take that, or that sort of goes to Finger Lakes reuse?
A huge collection of columns.
Yeah.
But it's all sometimes it's the space limitations.
Yeah.
Or just being able to physically get it here and get it in the building. For example, we just took there was a restaurant that changed names. The Albany pump station was bought out by a different brewery. So we actually have the giant neon sign from Albany pump station. So we want to definitely do something with the Albany, but you know, it depends. That all got delivered on a flatbed because the brewery owners that bought the building really wanted that to be saved because it was so iconic. So sometimes it depends on space. You know, like I said, I'm after my warehouse guys all the time to start liquidating, and then we get more huge stuff in and we see more full than ever. So it's a big shell game.
Yeah. We have a gigantic garage in the back with a loading dock, and we also have a giant parking lot behind us, but we're in a neighborhood, so we're on a special permit, so we can't leave too much stuff outside. When they deconstructed the building, which we did not do, it was actually Finger Lakes Reuse that it was Christmas time. It was last minute. I can't even tell you how crazy it was, but when they did that, she ended up renting a huge space. And then because of all the donations that she got during COVID, this was happening during COVID, they still ended up with so many other things, bags of clothes, books, you name it. So that it was really difficult. And now a lot of that stuff also needed to be processed, and you need a space to process that. So they were denailing, like volunteer denailing parties like crazy, and then running out of space. Ithaca has, I don't know if this makes the papers anywhere except Ithaca, but our space is really at a premium. The land here is worth just as much as with a building on it, and the prices are astronomical here, astronomical. So our property values, it would be impossible for us, as it is our partners, to have another warehouse anywhere right now. I think about it, I dream about it, to have a better, more efficient building. We eyeball the mall a lot because the mall is almost vacant. So we we eyeball that because you think about it and how it would be. And actually Finger Lakes Reuse has 2 spaces, but they're filled. They're just filled up. So, and we are too. But that's hence the 75% off millwork, which is working. By the way, Pam, that's working. So it's just been up there forever and we couldn't get rid of it. But I see people coming downstairs with this like giant bales of of millwork. So it's working.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've had somebody kind of talk about how, years ago, Historic Saranac Lake up here tried to do some salvage, a little bit here. And kind of, the Adirondacks being so spread out in rural areas in general. Do you have some sort of advice for kind of starting, an architectural salvage warehouse?
You have more space. You definitely have more space, just as we started. I think, if you make it a destination spot, there's the way that we are, because we're pretty isolated by geography for one thing. And then the closest part, the closest group that does it is like Rochester or Albany. We're sending people to Albany sometimes to buy things that we don't have. I would say, start small, see what your market looks like, and see where you're getting your stuff. The thing that everybody wants to do, which we found, is all contractors that are taking down a building, it's time, time is money. That's it. And to take a building down, to demolish it, is way quicker than deconstructing in any way. So unless you're in an area that has a taste for it, or a contractor or a demolition contractor, I think that's the best way to start. We're lucky we're starting to get a few of them around us. And we have more developers and contractors that are interested in working with us on that level. So like the deconstruction project on College Ave was actually, the unions came and participated because it was a great opportunity for learning also. In San Antonio, they did a deconstruction ordinance, and we watched them, enact it into law and approve it. And they talked a lot about the health and safety also, because when you take a building down, you're releasing those toxins into the land, the world. And we believe, at least at Crowd, that when the landfills are full, then everyone's going to pay attention, and so you're preventing that in your community already if you do something like that. That's one, health and safety, the toxins are not being released, and then you have space to have it. So that's it in a nutshell. I think more people are also more aware of climate action these days.
To that end, speaking about like demolition crews and things like that, I would imagine that there's some specialized skills needed to do deconstruction versus demolition. And is the workforce training that you do you get into any of that, or is that more advanced? And then
it's more advanced. First of all, anybody who's under 18 can't use power tools. So we keep them off the sites. They're safe for us, but there's a lot of learning that has to go into it. But we are teaching like the smaller skills, like the young person you saw on one of my slides who is like putting something back together. If you can put something together, you can take it apart. And it's the same discipline. So we're sort of teaching that right now, but the restoration end of it. So, they'll get something to denail or take apart hardware off a door because you don't sell it with the, things like that. So we are seeing that. There's also trainers on these sites. When we go to do that, there are trainers on these sites who, and there's differences of opinions about taking buildings down too. So, their skills. I mean, I learned a lot from the folks at, the volunteers. Some of those volunteers that Pam has are amazing, right? Like,
Yeah, they are, because there's a group of guys that can take a staircase apart. There are some that, they can get the mantels off the walls without breaking them. Or, if it's a multi-piece mantle, they can get that apart, come in, set it back up on the floor. There was going to be a deconstruction training in Schenectady recently,
right.
but unfortunately, and we were going to participate in that, but unfortunately it kind of fell apart. But, a lot of municipalities look at the economics of, we can take a house down in a couple of hours and haul it away. And yes, it's going to the landfill, but they're gonna look at it as time is money. And if you don't have that trained crew to deconstruct, and a lot of the buildings that come down in Albany, unfortunately, they're brick, which is harder to deconstruct. You know,
Yes.
a typical demo, unfortunately, ends up with a pile of bricks that gets hauled away. You know, so it really also has to start with the municipalities, because here in Albany, one of the things that we face is with the tax structure, if a building comes down, the county is involved in deciding the economics of stabilization versus demolition. If stabilization costs more than a demo, they're going to demo it. So these are the kinds of things that we deal with. You know, and like I said, for the majority of the buildings that come down, they're brick row houses, which, you know, none of us can take a house worth of bricks. You know, so there's some things, and it's something that I think we should be very interested in, but it also has to start at the city level for buy-in, and not just us wanting to do that. It has to be something there's buy-in citywide for that to start happening.
They're also now looking at sort of the bigger picture, and you know, federal mandates, state mandates, local mandates about, you know, we have to do something about climate action. Well, put buildings in there too. And the climate action plan for the it's called the New York State's climate action plan. It's like the CLPCA, we call it. They had nothing about building waste in there, and two women, one from Albany actually, spoke up and said, no, this needs to go in there. And
Yeah.
so it is in there. There's legislation, there's people trying to make a difference, and watching these municipalities with these landfill issues. What do? You can't ship it out. You can't ship it anywhere. What are you doing with it? Gotta do something. So, and DEC, so in working with the you know, crowd in the mornings, our statewide group has the members of DEC in it, NYSERDA, ESD, Empire State Development. They weren't at first, they were not coming around, and now they're coming around because they want solutions. So, and the building codes have to change too, to reuse that stuff. And that's a whole nother conversation. I could do a whole day on crowd, which we have.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen some of the crowd conversations, and they're very informative and engaging, and I certainly recommend people to watch them. You know, speaking of, and I don't know if you had said this or not, and I may have missed it, Susan, how much square footage do you have for?
About 15,000 square feet, but it's probably about 10 selling, because we have a whole area for the training site too. Like we have training off to the side in a staff room, a huge staff room, the addition to our building. And then a garage and some more storage space in the back. So not all of it is selling space.
Mhm. Do you have now some like sort of like age? I know you said you're starting to do some mid-century sort of, you know, things, but do you get, you know, people wanting to donate, you know, parts from their mobile home and things that this kind of come in that you have to say no to, or you?
Yes, yes. We send them, I point like this, and we point down to Finger Lakes Reuse, and we say they take things every day but Thursdays. And then I get
we recommend the Habitat Restore a lot here for
Yep.
things that, you know, somebody called the other day about appliances. You know, once in a while we'll get a really cool old vintage gas stove, but I don't want your gas stove from now. You know, and we are creeping into mid-century more and more, because obviously it's, you know, it's cool and people are looking for it, and, you know, and it's vintage. You know, when you think about how old things are, yeah, so a lot of lighting fixtures, we've had some furniture, and so yeah, it's you know, obviously the decades are following us.
The record player that I showed with that big credenza there, that I walked in the store, I saw it, I said, wow, that's really cool. Our marketing person put it up, I think on Facebook Marketplace. That's one of the vehicles that we use. but not, she's doing it. We're probably not, won't be doing it much longer, but, it sold in like 5 minutes.
Hmm.
It was crazy. And I should have said too, I forgot to say, they tried it before, but we're going to really try. The vehicles are a little bit better. We're going to do an online store. We're just waiting. We have a new manager actually coming on board next Monday. And so we are, waiting for her till we start, pioneering our online store. We have it all set up. Our marketing person has done this before. So we're just, getting ready to go with that.
Pam, I think I would seem to recall you when we were down there, you were talking about how you partnered with some other groups so that you can sort of give credit to low income, and so that people have more accessibility to have access to whatever you have in terms of pricing and items, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Me or Pam or both of us.
Or both of you, if you both,
Okay.
just know Pam mentioned it a little bit that when we had visited.
Mostly for us, what we do, where our scholarships and discounts come in is more for the tool library. Because we don't even want the $20 to ever be a barrier to being a member and being able to get the tools. And like I said, the vast majority of our DIY classes and programs are either underwritten, they're free, or very low cost. Like, for example, last Saturday, we sold out a full day plaster class. And because of donations, gift certificates that we were able to purchase the tools, we were able to do a full day with lunch class for $100. So that way, and we're also looking for sponsorships to be able to offer some scholarships for those classes as well. Because we don't want money to be a barrier to learning. But the nice thing too is when we buy these tools, then they belong to the tool library. So once you learn how to plaster, then you can come in and borrow those tools to take it home and do the project yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always considered with both places, that the items themselves are pretty low cost. They're not, you're not walking into Home Depot and having to pay, and there's some wiggle room sometimes. We also donate some of our, excessive materials. Like when we had the Balch Hall restoration project, and we had 600 pieces of furniture. Like we didn't want to, I still have some in my own barn because my partner offered to do that, but we were renting a storage space. We just didn't have enough room. But when Cornell was calling us, we said, well, what will happen with them if we don't take them? And they said, we're going to throw them to the landfill. So what do you do? Right. So Finger Lakes got some, we got some, somebody else might have received some. So we would, we'd let people know, like, if you need shelving for your classrooms, for other places. Not everyone's taken us up on it, but we'll do that as well, because you have so much excess stuff. So and sometimes it's good stuff. We also do free Fridays if there's things that just don't belong. There's been for a while. We'll put it out back, and it goes pretty well. So
yeah, we do that
yeah.
too. We put things out on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find that I know that you both said that doors and windows are kind of the predominant elements that you have. Are people, when they come in, are they restoring, just using it in a new construction, or how are they kind of using these elements that they're purchasing from you?
Well, I think for us, most of them are going in. We have, Albany has a very old housing stock. I mean, the vast majority of Albany was built before the 1930s. So the majority of what we sell goes back into houses. And when we're talking about pricing, I mean, we price things to move them back out. I mean, obviously it's a revenue stream for us, but also we want to price things accordingly so that people can afford them to put back into their houses. Because some of the the other places near us, you start heading south, you start heading down to Hudson, you start heading toward New York City, and the prices are huge. And during the pandemic, everybody from New York started moving north. So it drives up the prices because they know they can get it. So we try to be, fair market value of what things are worth. And if it's something unique, the guys are always online doing research to figure out what is it, what's it worth and what will the market bear here.
Yeah, same with us. We do the same research. Also we have some new buildings being built. We do the same as Historic Albany. We have a lot of buildings that are old. We have a lot of rental apartments too here. We have we're about, I think 70%, 60%, between 60 and 70% rentals. So we have these, old buildings that have been rehabbed over for apartments forever and ever. Cornell didn't originally even provide housing for their students. So that was a long time in coming. So we have a lot of that kind of rooming house type building sometimes. So that gets used for that. But we also are seeing it in creatively used in new construction as well. We we had a staff person who since moved. He was our light repair person. He used to be a set designer, and he took doors and made wainscoting out of them. If you want to see it, we do not have a YouTube channel, but we have it. If you look up Historic Ithaca, and look up YouTube, and it's the like creative uses of salvage. You can't even believe what he did with salvage. It's mind blowing, actually. So doors became wainscoting. So I don't know.
Sounds like a design competition for Cornell students.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, when we
good
do our
idea.
Preservation Merit Awards in the fall, we have a warehouse award. So usually the guys, will tell us, who's been using things incredibly creatively. And usually, and then we give them an award, for creative reuse or, not just our best shopper, but where are things going and what are people doing with them?
Yeah, same. We don't have that, but we're putting it in because I just feel like it's such a necessary component to what we do.
Mhm.
So,
And then we usually pick something from the warehouse and put an engraved plaque on it.
yeah, yep.
What a delight. It's really exciting to hear about this. For anyone who has the opportunity to go to these salvage places, they're really sort of like little treasure hunts. And even if you're not looking to buy anything, it's just really interesting to see all the different things and to different styles, different woods.
You're right. You never know. You never know what you're going to find in when I go, it's next door to my office where I sit right now, but it's amazing what we have. And
I go to the warehouse every Monday morning to see what came in over the weekend to put my name on stuff.
I'm trying to get rid of but also too, what's also fascinating, and just like as an aside to everyone, a lot of our young people that work here don't know some of the things that come in. They've never seen them. Overhead projector, the TVs. One of them he's like an old soul, so he knows, but like they have no idea how to use it. I heard recently on some movie, it was a period piece, a young actor didn't know how to use a rotary phone. They had to stop filming to teach him how to use a rotary phone. So we have I'm always asking them, I'm like, have you guys ever seen a film projector? And they just look at me like, what's wrong with you? So it's pretty fascinating.
You can tell Susan and I love talking about what we do.
Yes. Yeah, and if anybody visits, let us know that you heard us on this this podcast. No, I'm just kidding. The webinar, let us know, seriously, because it's interesting to meet people from all over. And that's also the fun part of it too, right, Pam? Like it's really
Yeah,
fun
and I think the one other thing that that I didn't mention too is that the warehouse is a destination. So there are people who know us as HAF, the advocacy organization, and there's people who know us as HAF, the warehouse. And right now, the vast majority of our new members are primarily we are a membership organization. So the vast majority of our new members are coming from our visitors to the warehouse.
Yep.
So it's also a great opportunity for us to then engage those people in everything else that we do. Because you don't get a warmer lead for membership than somebody walking into your building because they believe in your mission. So it's been really great to now incorporate all of those folks into the rest of our programming and events and our fundraising. So it's been a real win, not just the revenue in the warehouse. And if you're a member, you get 20%. And, you know, some of our board members were like, that's a lot. I said, but you know what? That money is going to come back to us in another way. They're going to go to a lecture. They're going to go to an event. They're going to do something else with us. They're going to give us a gift to the annual fund. So it's been a real synergy that we didn't have in the past, being able to capture those people and get them rolled into everything else that we do. Thank you. This has been great.
Really fun. Yeah, really fun. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for attending.
Yes, thank you so much for your
Thank
interest
you.
here. Yes.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Good
Take
to see
care.
you all.